year. Previous to that, I served 5 years at Social Service Headquarters in Great Britain. And I met a number of your officers through the ICO experience, as on a regular basis I lectured on social services at the ICO. Prior to that, I was on the west coast of Canada in Vancouver, a long appointment of approximately 15 years, where there I was involved in developing addiction services, services to women who were abused and battered, and a street ministry called the Crosswalk. And so coming back into the territory, it was challenging to me to see and to view all the work that had been done in social services through the Future of Caring document, and particularly leading up to this July 1st of this year, when what was 4 departments would be integrated. My role as the director of program was to look at the need to develop an integrated and specialized perspective on social services delivery when it came to program. And you can imagine now this Office of Social Services with approximately 20 consultants. Consultants ranging from corrections to addictions to management information services to communications and health services. How do we begin to form a team and work together and to provide for the divisions a coordinated expertise and approach to social services delivery? And so very early in my appointment, I began to think of a way in which we could work together, and thus was struck the Consultants Forum, of which I am the chairperson. We meet approximately every 3 weeks, and you can imagine, being a territorial department, there's a lot of travel, a lot of people are out of the office, but we always often get a number of people who can begin to work on these issues through the forum. When we looked at the beginning of the forum, we asked ourselves, what was it that we wanted to accomplish through this process? We saw ourselves, first of all, building team as this new integrated structure. We wanted to understand what it was to have a group process of responding to the immediate. And the immediate might mean something like cutbacks, which are suddenly thrust upon us. How do we respond in such a way to divisions that are feeling the thrust of that? Looking at new items of legislation. And remember, all the time, thinking about all those consultants of a variety of backgrounds, giving their own particular approach to that legislation and how it would impact on particular service. We were conscious of the fact that very often we would be asked to process information, requests that could come in from the division in terms of new program ideas. And so often we find ourselves working together outside of the regular forum meetings. One of the things you have to realize in our new structure, we are no longer line managers to the divisional social service centers. We are consultants, and we are constantly asking ourselves, what is it to be a consultant? And we are, through this forum, developing a consultancy style, being comfortable with going out and facilitating, providing ideas. And in that sense, we have to be well educated, well ahead of, with management and with information and with ideas of the responses that we're being asked to give in the divisions. We leave room for guest spots at the consultant meetings. Just 3 weeks ago, we had Dr. Jim Reed, who is the director of our Ethics Center in Winnipeg. We are conscious of the fact that social services will demand an ethical response to many issues. We are now looking in correctional services, the whole response that's needed with respect to DNA and the request that the government is making of us to make a response to that issue. And so by working together as consultants in team process, we also contribute to our own individual agendas. And we allow individuals, as they bring their particular agenda, something that they're working on as an individual, to share that with the rest of the group so that they can be helped and aided in getting a new perspective. One of the things we need to understand that as well as the Consultants Forum, we have 3 working groups. We have a program working group, a human resources working group, and a research and development working group. And they all have their own terms of reference. And as those terms of reference were being developed, we then brought the individual terms of reference to the consultants forum to see where there was overlap, and then to refine the individual terms of reference for the working groups. We are conscious of the fact that in the divisions are the appointment of the divisional secretary for program. That particular position is responsible not only for the social services but for the field. And the appointees, the people that are carrying out that service throughout the divisions, are not all experienced in social service ministry. And so we, as of this past week, have invited the divisional secretaries for program to be members where they are in their own regions of this consultants forum. They are members by receiving the agenda and the minutes. They are members by being able to contribute to the agenda of the consultants forum. Through that process, we believe that as they look at those minutes, they will understand that we are discussing issues that will affect them. And also, we are providing for them an ability to give us their issues so that we can be in coordination with what particularly are burning issues for themselves. We had a meeting today, and if I was to share with you the particular agenda that we shared, we had, for example, our communications consultant talking about our accreditation booklet, and you'll be hearing from Major Ray Moulton on the whole process of accreditation. But you can see that by developing conversation around one issue, that we begin as a team to have ownership and understanding. We talked about looking at our own role as consultants and logging what we do, so that when the requests come in from the divisions, we then have some understanding how often we're being requested. Are there some main issues that are coming through? And so we look at some very practical issues of handling and developing our work. And so it is an encouragement to meet that 2 hours every 3 weeks, but we're finding that the time isn't long enough. And so now we are planning in the next couple of months an opportunity to go up to our conference center, about an hour away from the city, for 2 days, to really look in depth and at length, almost every quarter, at what the issues are in terms of the consultants forum.
Thank you very much, Christine. There'll be an opportunity at the end of our presentation to have further discussion and clarification, but I'd like to introduce you now to Major Elva Jolly. Major Jolly is the Director of Human Resource Planning in our department. She's going to tell you a little bit about herself and then talk about the work that she's doing.
Good afternoon. I really am the jolly major of this team and enjoy it very much. Before I talk about my particular responsibility, I just want to share some background with you so that you'll understand a little more of what it is we do. At the moment, there are 347 officers presently serving in social services in our territory. That represents a quarter of the officers' strength in Canada and Bermuda. Alongside the officership are 9,300 employees. When you add these figures together, you realize how important it is to have a human resource management program. When the final step in our restructuring took place last July, a director of human resources and a consultant were appointed in our Department of Social Services. Our major mandate is to develop a human resource plan for social services in Canada. Our goal, and I'm sure you've heard this before, as it relates to large corporation, our goal is to have the right number of the right kind of people in the right place at the right time. And you will agree, I'm sure, that this is a mammoth task. So often in our organization, when it comes to appointments, we've been reactive and we're trying now to be proactive. It's interesting that at this moment, the top leadership is presently addressing the need to have a comprehensive human resource plan for the territory. But we are excited to be able to state that we've already started, and they will probably be asking us for some advice. We hope they will at any time. But we realize we see our social services human resource plan being folded in to the national plan in time. Mention has already been made about our strategic plan, the future of caring. And time does not permit, but suffice to say that in Section 4, human resources and education and training are addressed, and the need for specialization on the eve of the 21st century. The central issue in Salvation Army Social Services Human Resources Management, education, and training is just that, specialization. Simply put, it is a recognition of the fact that social service operations have become highly complex, demanding, and technically sophisticated. As such, staff in our operations must possess experience and training required to work and manage effectively. I believe that it is imperative that a body of specialized, well-trained social service officers be developed. We think these officers should be recruited with a vocation in social services, ministry, and specifically trained for the positions that they will fill in the future. Their whole career should be planned and managed so that they will gain the experience necessary to move into positions of greater responsibility. We need to desist from using the Peter Principle. Are you familiar with that in New Zealand?
We are, yes.
Yes.
We use it often.
Well, we're trying to refrain. We think these officers need to be recruited for sure. In order to do this, we must have the human resource plan, and officers must be developed in social services. In that strategic plan that I mentioned, there are 5 recommendations, and we are addressing those at the moment as we develop our plan. We see the recent appointment of the Director of Human Resources and the consultant as a window of opportunity for us. It is a new experience that brings with it unique challenges as well. You've heard the phrase, "It's never been done before." And there have been some challenges, but we've made a beginning. The Human Resources Consultant and myself are responsible to monitor the evaluation and training needs of officers and key management personnel. I don't want you to think that we're trying to manage our plan with 9,300 employees. We are merely looking at the moment at the officers and the management and the key lay personnel in management positions. This is an important component of our human resource plan in the territory. It is estimated that there are over 400 facilities doing social services in Canada. And when you think that those 400 facilities have within them 3 or 4 programs as an average, there are a number of programs to be managed, and our staff must be qualified and trained. We have mentioned the Human Resource Working Group. That group I lead, and it is an integral part of the Territorial Social Services Department, which provides leadership in the development of social services human resource planning. We have developed our terms of reference and attempting to collate the necessary information required for our database. From my perspective, one of the exciting features that has happened for us is the ability to liaise with other departments at THQ for input. Shortly, we'll be expanding our human resource group to include the Secretary for Candidates, representatives from the Training College, College for Officers Training, and our Education and Personnel Department. Networking with our partners in ministry is a critical component. In preparation for what we are doing, the consultant and myself went out into the community and met with large corporations and our own Scarborough Grace Hospital, as well as had the opportunity to talk to the head of chaplaincy for the Canadian Armed Forces and received some good input and advice from them as it relates to developing a plan. Yes, the task is monumental and requires very careful planning, but the outcome will be well worth the investment of time and energy, and a more effective and efficient delivery of social service programs, and the Salvation Army, I believe, will be better stewards of its human resources. Thank you.
Campbell, I'm not sure how much you know about Canada, but it might be helpful to put everything that has been said so far in the context that our country is 5,200 miles wide from coast to coast. And in addition to the complexity and number of programs, you'll understand that that's spread over a large geographical area with, I think, something in the order of 28 to 30 million people, I think, in Canada. Our next presenter is Major Ray Moulton. Ray is the Assistant Social Services Secretary. His background is in addictions, and he's going to talk to you about, in two parts. One has to do with the research and development aspect of what we're doing, but more particularly, he's going to talk to you about our accreditation program.
Thank you. In the research and development, we are new as a social services department, and so are becoming prepared to respond to those issues. And that preparedness is developing a resource center, collecting of relevant material that will help us to respond to issues, to be able to research and share information with centers and the Army across the territory. Second, we are developing a management information system. Hopefully it will be a territory-wide system that will, we've always collected statistics, but they've not often led to good numbers to help us manage. We are proposing developing a system that will be more user-friendly, that will provide better information to help us manage services in Canada. Thirdly, we have on our team a communications consultant, and developing a much better way of using technology and using better communication skills to share the story, the issues in our department and across the country. So those are the building blocks that we are putting in place to be able to respond to research development issues as they come along. Wanting to share with you something of the accreditation or program review and accreditation that we are developing. Have a couple of slides or graphics that might help understand this. And this first one gives a view of what we are doing, how the process is attempting to work. We are beginning by developing standards of good service delivery that will be in place, and a procedure that is used in an accreditation to measure centers and how they are doing. This green block in the middle is the center, is the service that looks at their mission, their mandate, their service, the activities they're involved, etc. So we apply these standards in an accreditation process to what is happening within a center. Following that process, which may take anywhere from 2 or 3 days, with 2 or 3 individuals from THQ, DHQ, and perhaps peer involvement, a report is produced that indicates the results of the survey and perhaps some recommendations. That is left with the local center to develop an action plan as to how they are going to respond. They may have the division involved with that plan, or they may develop that plan themselves. It's expected that they will develop that plan within a couple of months of having the accreditation survey. and then they implement that plan. This accreditation survey does not happen that often. It's 3-4 years perhaps, and it's very intensive. So in the interim, there is an annual review and follow-up that the divisions conduct, that they would base this follow-up on the summary report, the action plan that's developed, plus any other issues that the division would be aware of that they want to check up annually in the center. And that's this dotted line, that this is an annual process, and the accreditation process is much longer. That's still to be determined, perhaps 3-4 years, wherever we are. The accreditation seeks to do a couple of things. We are really wanting to encourage and promote quality, client-centered processes. We're interested that we don't look at simply a snapshot of what is happening on the particular day that a survey or reviewer visits a center, but we're wanting to look at what is happening in that center that is a process towards delivering good quality client-centered services. The second thing we want to look at is the risk management issues, those specific areas of concern that may lead to risk for clients, staff, Salvation Army properties, etc. Going back to that first one, this client-centered process really refers to that center having a well-defined mission, values, and culture that leads to activities that are key to good service, and that they have their own planning process, their own evaluation process, all of it centered around the client and related to the client. Not what they as a staff or a center want to do, but based on the needs of the client. That's what we mean by that client-centered process. In risk management, these are standards that express an absolute level of performance expectation, things that ought to be there for good service. And these standards attempt to manage our risk in terms of health and safety concerns, legal ethical issues, compliance with current acceptable standards of care in the various disciplines that may be involved in that center. Those are the two main objectives of an accreditation review. The survey team, in visiting and conducting the survey, are there to assess the evidence that the center or the service is successfully fulfilling processes of client-centered service. They are there to be responsive to the local management team, to help them lead, perhaps engage in opportunities of coaching. And they are there to report any risk management areas that require attention. Some may be critical areas. We see this whole process as a difference from the previous annual review that was conducted. In the previous review, we had the boss coming to inspect generally. In this process, we're looking at consultants to come to work with the local management. The previous style was we went to measure activity. At this time, we want to come and monitor process. Again, it's not to look at the snapshot only of what's happening, but to look at what is happening in the journeys of these centers towards delivering good service. We're wanting to look at the old system prescribed answers to centers. Now we're looking at expecting answers to come from the local management to respond to their issues. In the old system, we attempted to manage risks. Here, we're trying to report on the risks so that the local management can make some decisions to deal with them. In the past, there was an event. Very often, centers prepared for this occasion by developing, filling out reams of statistics, etc. It was an event that they were involved with. Now we want it to become part of their planning process, that we are involved with them in their cycle of planning, so that it's not an event that happens in the calendar of the year and forgotten about, but is part of what they are involved with day by day. A survey team role. They would go to a review center to assess the evidence. I'm sorry, I have used this once before. The the whole process then is an attempt to move it towards an integral part of what we are doing in the center, and intruding on the planning process that they're involved with, and encourage them to plan towards services that are client-centered based, and attempting to help them understand that process involved with good service delivery.
Thanks very much, Ray. That brings us to the end of Canada's segment. Campbell, perhaps now we could sit back and listen to you.
Well, we sort of feel we want to run away at this point. That's been very, very helpful. Thank you very much, and we look forward to the discussion. We've emphasised, I guess, in our presentation some of the changes that are happening in New Zealand. One of the reasons for that is that we seem to have a predominance at the moment of Canadian television crews arriving in New Zealand and wanting to interview us. I've done 2 interviews recently with Canadian television crews because there seems to be a real emphasis on the New Zealand economy and some of the changes that are happening, and obviously Canada's going down some of the same paths that we've gone down rather dramatically. I'm, as I said earlier, the Secretary for Social Program. Our social services in New Zealand are a lot smaller in terms of size. We're most probably talking about 1,000 staff overall. So, we're proportionately a lot smaller, and of course the country is a lot smaller. But many of the very same issues and things that you're struggling with, we are. I decided to talk a bit about new managerialism because social services in New Zealand have dramatically altered in the last 5 or 6 years. And those changes have really come about because of the way in which the government has gone about things. In that they've moved, New Zealand's moved away from a largely sort of welfare state orientation to a very much a market-driven situation. And I guess a major part of that reform process has been new managerialism. Now, when we talk about new managerialism, we're talking about sort of a collection of ideas, which I'll just get Alan to put up on the screen there. But emphasis on the skill of the manager rather than professional skill, a shift away from controlling inputs and using bureaucratic rules to managing outputs, devolution of control, breakdown into manageable units, preference for contractors, the public sector and the encouragement to voluntary sector has been to imitate private sector management practices rather than the bureaucratic processes of the past. Cost-cutting efficiency has been a sort of mark of departments which have we've had huge reductions in staff across the government sector, and the encouragement has been to be about that ourselves, and concentration on the customer and on quality. So those have been the major part of that sort of new managerialism emphasis. What that's meant for us in terms of the Salvation Army is we had a key piece of legislation in New Zealand, which was the Public Finance Act, and that dramatically changed the relationship of the public sector to the political process in terms that the government has now got to report in terms of outputs. And so everything that Cabinet buys so much each year, and they then go out into the community and contract. So our whole relationship with government now is in contracting. We have been still very much dominated by, I suppose, in terms of the Salvation Army, processes which have been very bureaucratic. And so we're now having to face up with a whole lot of other things. We're devolving from centralised hierarchical management to more locally based management. The public sector organisations have now been reorganised into smaller business units, and so instead of dealing with large government departments, we're now often dealing with localised small business units within that government, for instance in our health services, and Douglas will talk a bit about those sorts of changes. But we've we're now talking about localised regional health authorities rather than a sort of central Ministry of Health. The agencies that we contract with now imitate and reflect private sector business. They are concerned about the bottom line, they're concerned about efficiencies, they're concerned about those sorts of deliveries. Quality and the customer are becoming key, and as I said before, contractual arrangements now dominate. So that's the environment which we've had to deal with, and what impact that's had upon the Army is that it has affected dramatically our social services. It's highlighted at the Army's very heavy bureaucratic organisation in New Zealand, and also that we've been very much concerned with input controls, and I was interested in what Ray was saying before in terms of your review process, because we had to... are you still hearing us, by the way, down there?
Yes,
Very
we are.
well.
Yes.
Okay, we just got a picture that's gone wrong here. We're shifting in focus from input controls to output controls. Our management is now concentrating more attention on strategic management and planning, but I think that we find that most of our officers are most probably good middle managers, but have not had a lot of skills in terms of strategic management, and so that whole area of strategic management is something that we're really having to grapple with. I think that new managerialism, in a sense, has provided to us, where we've tended to be as an organisation very pragmatic, it's provided a philosophical style that's been helpful to us, but it's also a bit dangerous. In some senses, I think sometimes you can be pulled into that sort of managerialism style, and some of the sort of touchstones of our own philosophy and our own theology and our own spirituality can start to become a bit woolly. So I think that's something that we've had to look at. I think also we've thought sometimes that we can transfer private sector business operations into the Army, and they'll just be able. We've been rather naive about some of that, I think, and it hasn't been easy to do that. I mean, it's been difficult sometimes for consultants, I think, outside, and I'd be interested in your comments about this. They've had quite impressive records of consultancy, but they found it very difficult to come to grips with an organisation that sort of sees prayer and faith alongside managerial competency and sort of spiritual integrity, and so those sorts of issues. Because I think the accountability of the private sector organisation is often less complicated than an organisation like the Army, in terms that, as well as our accountability to a spiritual mandate and theology, we sort of have this accountability to our sort of international fraternity as well, and to a community and to the public and to all of those sorts of things. I think also that we have a bit of a fear perhaps that the predominance of a planned strategic environment can lead to less spontaneity and less innovation. And we are a bit worried about that we're now so much planned that actually are we going to be able to respond in some of the ways that we did in the past, and that the whole idea of sort of new managerialism can become a bit messianic, that it can seem like it provides answers all of the time, and if we follow down those sort of managerialism theories, that we're actually going to reach the promised land. So there's been some real questions for us. The questions are, I suppose, will the demands to uncritically imitate a private sector model of organisational life become so seductive that the mission, spirituality and theology of the Army is put at risk? Also, will the spontaneity and innovation of the Army fall victim to the need for a more planned approach that only focuses on the core activities? Is it possible that the Salvation Army will be captured by a performance measure of cost effectiveness, and as a result lose sight of the wider and more important theological message of effectiveness? And lastly, could the Army in New Zealand see in the approach to the new managerialism a messiah that will lead them to the future? So what I'm trying to convey is that we are really in this huge change at this stage of a whole emphasis on the market emphasis on management. And we're going down that track, and we're actually having a lot of gains from it. But I guess there are also some questions for us which we're struggling with, and which I sense from your presentation so far, they must be questions you're also struggling with. What at this stage I'd like to do is get Douglas to talk a bit about health reforms and what is happening.
Thank you. Obviously, in Canada you have a vastly different environment from us here in New Zealand, but I was pleased to see that there were many similar themes emerging what I've heard from you this morning, and Ray's talk on accreditation, particularly with music to my ears. One of the themes that is applied here and that Campbell mentioned in his talk is that small is beautiful, and that one of the aims of restructuring is to break things down into their natural units, if you like. Now, the lessons that I'm going to talk about are lessons for the Salvation Army in New Zealand. How much it applies to Canada, I'll leave up to you to judge. You're obviously better resourced and well ahead of us in some areas, at least, and that's clear. The nature of the health reforms in New Zealand is, I don't know how familiar that is to you. I'll just give you a quick pen picture of them. Before the health reforms, we had a system where there was a mix of public and private providers. And I'm using an example here. For aged care, the contracts with the Department of Social Welfare, nothing to do with health at all. There was a general lack of rigour in those contracts, mainly a focus on price and not much focus at all on quality. There was a national price formula, everybody got the same price, and there was an annual increase for inflation. There was competition in the aged care market, but in many sectors where the public sector dominated, there was no competition, and a lot of it is demand driven with uncapped budgets, all of which of course was great concern for the government, and in particular with health services. The management of health services was perceived to be lacking in modern management skills and financial acumen, and they were unable to demonstrate value for money. So with education, health became one of the last major public sectors to be overhauled as part of the government's program for economic recovery. So that's just a pen picture of what it was like before the health reforms. Let's look at what it's like post the health reforms, and we're now in our third year. They started in July 1993. Now again, I'm using an example of aged care, but it is typical to a greater or lesser degree of other areas. They're mainly private providers. The public providers are exiting because their own cost structures in that particular industry, aged care, are too great. There's a strong downward pressure on prices. What I need to explain is that there's been a separation of the purchaser and provider role. Do you understand what I mean by purchaser and provider? Is that a concept
Yes.
familiar to you in Canada? Yes. Well, that was all mixed up together in the old system, so there are now people called regional health authorities, and they buy services. And there are people like us who provide them. We're a provider. And so that the purchasers are exerting strong downward pressure on prices. They're differentiating. If you've got better quality, if there's a lack of supply in a particular area, you'll get a better price than someone else. Before, with open-ended demand, there was no control on volume. There's now needs assessment before you can get into a rest home. There's a strong emphasis on service specifications and quality standards. There's a heavy increase in the dependency of rest homes, of residents in rest homes. And it's the same in our acute hospitals. You have to be very ill indeed to be in hospital now, and you don't stay too long at all. In the rest home sector, there always has been and still is competition, but that competition now applies to the whole health sector. So, for example, some public hospital surgery is now being done by private providers who have won contracts. And the other thing that's happening, particularly in aged care, and you've referred to it in your talks, they're substituting more desirable and or more cost-effective services, in particular community services for residential services. So those are the kinds of things that are happening, and I think you would be familiar with many of them. The lessons for us, time already. All right. He's about a quarter of the way through. Well, Betty's watch obviously goes at twice the speed of mine. We move very fast in New Zealand. The lessons are obviously going to be quite compressed. And I'll have to rapidly edit this. Right. The first lesson is that you need to be well prepared for your contract negotiations. You must have good information, and you must present it well, a good understanding of your own competitive advantages. And I think reputation is very important. The Salvation Army enjoys an excellent reputation in New Zealand, and we need to take care to protect that and to act in accordance with it at all times. Another lesson for us was to develop coalitions and networks, particularly in this the initial time of reform, when a lot of information is uncertain, it's quite chaotic, there's big secrets. It's important to develop alliances with trusted people who you can actually share information that you're not supposed to share, like prices and costs. And but ultimately you have to look to your own interests and act in accordance with your own goals and objectives. And I think one of the things you've got to be aware of is getting caught up in other people's agendas. They want to tie you into their pacts with them. Competition has made the major difference. I mean, everybody is trying to do the best they can and get a bigger slice of the cake. And that really affects the way the organisation is managed. And that's what Campbell has been talking about. And I think, in particular, the organisation has to have a vision of where it's going. And I think here we still lag behind that in that the vision for social services, or for the Salvation Army's social services, is seen as a responsibility of the Social Services Department alone. It's not seen as a responsibility of the Salvation Army, and I think that's a real fundamental shortcoming. The other thing that we have to focus on is continuous quality improvement. I think you referred to total quality of management, and it's quite a hard job getting managers to recognise that this is something that has to happen every day. I mean, they moan and groan at the inexorable demand of competition and continuous focus on improvement, and getting them to realise it's not just something you do 1 month and then it's all right for a year is quite a challenge. Moving along very rapidly now, and I see my 5 minutes is nearly up.
For the second time.
Well, money, of course, is really important. You'd know that. And one of the things we discovered after the health reform, prior to the health reforms, it was a pretty comfortable environment, and the money kind of rolled in. We took a pounding, like many other church providers, at first. Some of them focused on long negotiations, got bitter and twisted over price. That's just one aspect. We're focused on overall revenue, making sure we increase our volumes, keep our volumes up, and on costs. And we've done a lot of work in controlling our costs. Quality, well, quality is the key word, really. Although a lot of it's about money, there's a huge focus on quality. Just to give you an example, our aged care homes are now being visited by purchaser audit teams who spend up to 6 hours grilling the management, the local management, intensively, going over their documentation and issuing scores at the end of them and ranking the scores with all the other providers, and then paying a price based on the score. So it is pretty rigorous. Now, having said all that, and it might sound a bit negative, the health reforms are full of opportunities for enterprising and capable organisation, and we in fact have actually been successful in taking advantage of some of those opportunities. We've opened new services that before the health reforms we had no opportunity or limited opportunity of opening, such as hospital wings on adding to our rest homes and home care services. So there we are. That's the lessons we're learning.
Yeah. Good.
Thanks, Douglas. And now I'll ask George to talk about our training and employment program, which is focusing on employment opportunities in New Zealand.
Yes, hello. Thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit of our program with you. Just to commence, I just want to give you a quick cameo of what our current operation does, and then we'll move on to some of the more demanding aspects of it. We currently are recognised as the largest community-based provider in New Zealand, and we have provision for up to 1,200 students, or trainees as we call them in New Zealand. We offer a very wide range of courses, predominantly vocational, such things as engineering, carpentry, horticulture, conservation, upholstery, you name it, we can do it. And we also focus a lot of our attention on literacy and numeracy needs for the trainees. We have a budgeted income of around about $12 million, and we have 240 staff. In our national office, we oversight and develop and administer the programs on behalf of the Army, and largely because we are government funded, we're responsible to ensure good audit procedures there. We also have just commenced last year a development unit, and the development manager obviously looks after development issues, research and future programs that we can operate with. We have some current projects that we're working on in line with our strategic plan, and that is developing and coordinating the provision of quality teaching resources, as we are now linked up with the New Zealand Qualifications Authority, and we deliver units of learning, and the trainees actually achieve credits at the end of their particular time with us. We have embarked on a more aggressive public relations program for the training and employment programs, and we have just installed, or in the process of installing, a national email link-up system with all our programs spread around the country. So primarily, of course, we are involved in financially viable programs in education, training, life skills, and employment. I just want to move on very quickly to the biggest current issue that we have relating to unemployment. And I'll just show you the overhead. This document.
Yeah, there you are. It's up there.
While New Zealand's overall unemployment rate has dropped over the last 4 years from just under 11% down to just over 6%, the current Indigenous Maori rate is still unacceptably high, as is the rate for Pacific Islanders who live in New Zealand. And it is just over 4% for the rest of the population that are unemployed. And so in response to this particular imbalance, the government is specifically targeting Maori and Pacific Island strategies and putting in additional resources into that area. So you can understand that we have over 50% of our trainees being Maori or Pacific Islanders, and we need to accommodate them, as I say, not just for the vocational and literacy needs, but also for cultural perspectives as well. So quite understandably, we need to employ staff who are focused in that direction. With respect to future developments that we have on the programs, we are obviously working on increased diversity in programs and activities in response to new government and private sector initiatives which address unemployment. We need to and are working more closely with the secondary schools and the secondary and tertiary alignment programs in an effort to smooth the transition for students into this particular sector of education. And I'm talking largely about the low academic achievers. We are also working more closely at local and national level with other training providers and industry for moderation and quality purposes that encompass the expertise and resources that we have as a national provider. And last but not least, our future direction that we wish to pursue is to continue to assist those in need by providing a high standard of education and training in vocational and life skills that is appropriate to the current educational, industry and social environments in New Zealand. I hope that has given you a quick cameo of what our training and employment programs are about. Thank you.
We'll now ask David Don Hudson, who's our long experience in addictions, to talk about some of the things that are happening in our addictions area.
Greetings. So, of course, the addiction field has suffered a lot of rapid change. The whole field of alcohol and drug services in New Zealand is undergoing currently rapid change from that which we've known in the past. From a predominantly residentially focused service base, the move now is towards a largely community-centred program. This whole process is driven by the direction of government funding, of course, and by the apparent unreserved acceptance by funders of overseas research findings on the various types of treatment options and their research-proven effectiveness. The consequence of this is that the goal of all regional health authorities, the controllers of funding, is to reduce the number and length of residential treatment programs. 3 weeks is seen as the maximum length of residential program needed, with increasing control being placed on the gateway process of admission to such programs. The emphasis then is on harm reduction and day or outpatient programs. Most regional health authorities see this being made possible by a transfer of funds from residential programs across to day or outpatient programs rather than any increase in funding generally. Current keyword is efficiency. On an overhead projection, a summary of key areas, target areas for regional health authorities is the expansion of non-residential treatment services, an increase in services aimed specifically or specially for young people, more services for women, more services for Maori, reduction in expenditure on residential services, and improved services for those with coexisting mental health and alcohol and drug programs, otherwise known as dual diagnosis. The challenges that the Bridge program now faces in New Zealand, firstly, is to firmly establish day programs and outpatient services. We're receiving more so-called difficult clients presenting for residential treatment, that is dual diagnosis, younger clients, increasing justice referrals, a greater emphasis on quality and program auditing, coupled with shrinking financial support. You've already mentioned that, a challenge for your own services. Services, in fact, are being squeezed, increasing demands on staff and resources. And here we were facing the process of, a required process of working through the process of accreditation with the New Zealand Accreditation Board for Alcohol and Drug Services, quality control if you like. This is an independent body, not a Salvation Army group. And the challenge is to retain, it seems to me, the heart of our mission in the climate of competitive contracting for service provision. Where to from here? Well, I see many of the changes are positive. The drive towards quality of program, for instance, day and outpatient programs are being established, aftercare programs are being more thoroughly established and thought through, services particular to the needs of women are being targeted, greater recognition of the needs of dual diagnosis clients is helping to point us towards ways in which we can help in cooperation with the mental health services. Much has already been done, but in my view much still remains to be accomplished. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. And our last presenter, David, is Keith, who's our Divisional Social Services Secretary in Auckland. And I thought it would be just helpful to sort of give an overview of, from her divisional point of view, where things are at in terms of our structure in New Zealand at this stage.
Oh, good morning or good afternoon to you. Of course, 5 minutes only allows the opportunity for a very brief discussion on my topic, the problems and advantages of the present administration of Salvation Army Social Services in New Zealand. But let me first of all provide a very brief overview of the design of Salvation Army Social Services Administration in New Zealand, and then conclude with a brief identification of some of the problems and advantages of the administrative structure which exists. Well, to begin, here's a diagram of the administration of the New Zealand territory. I might have that. I'm conscious that it will be difficult for you to read, but let me run you through it as quickly as I can. Obviously, the territory is headed by the Territorial Commander at the top. To the right, you will note that the Secretary for Social Program is directly responsible. The next one down there, Alan. That one there, yeah. the Secretary for Social Program is directly responsible to the Secretary for Program, who is a member of the 5-man Territorial Cabinet. Assisting the Secretary for Social Program in the administration of Salvation Army Social Services are 5 national managers, each having a territorial responsibility for one of the 5 major areas of social service provided. Those are treatment for addiction, provision of training and employment programs, provision of services to older people, provision of community and family services, and provision of services to disabled adults. To complicate the matter further, assisting in the role of the administration are 5 divisional social services secretaries, 1 in each division, and responsible not to the Secretary for Social Program, but to their respective divisional commanders. Last of all comes the managers of our social programs, right at the bottom. So you will observe that there is a multi-level structure of social service administration in this territory. Certainly the greatest potential problem in this complex administrative structure revolves around areas of responsibility. Blurred boundaries between the responsibilities of national managers, who have a territorial responsibility for a particular social program, and the Divisional Social Services Secretary, who has a divisional responsibility to the divisional commander for that same program. This has the capacity to create large cracks into which matters could easily fall and thus not be addressed by either. I'm getting some encouragement here. Look up.
Very nice.
That's shiny.
Yeah. Right, thank you. The possibility for friction between these 2 administrative roles certainly exists. Having said this, in my experience, constant open dialogue between national managers and divisional social services secretaries has thus far avoided any serious cracks or friction, but the structure certainly creates the possibilities for those to occur. In my view, the advantages which exist in this present structure far outweigh the problems. The existence of national managers to administer and speak on behalf of a social service territorially ensures that the Secretary for Social Program is not faced with the impossible task of keeping abreast of all of the complex issues relating to all 5 major areas of social service and having to be required to be an expert on them all. This also frees the Secretary for Social Program to serve as a visionary leader of the social services and to advocate for the social programs in the departments at territorial headquarters. The existence of divisional social services secretaries ensures that officers serving in social programs are cared for personally and pastorally, and that they are also included in the life of the division. The fact that each national manager also heads a quality improvement working party comprised of mainly officer staff working in the particular area of service, and also a representative divisional social services secretary, ensures that macro policies and also procedures are developed by grassroots level people. As a consequence, policies and procedures are more easily implemented in local programs. In conclusion, let me say that previous speakers have outlined the climate in which Salvation Army Social Services are required to serve in New Zealand, and it must be noted that careful attention which is able to be provided to social services through our current structure aids greatly in the fulfilling of our mission statement to care for people, transform lives and reform society. In all, our social service structure gets my vote.
Thanks, Keith. Well, I'm not sure, David, how we just want to handle this discussion, but there are obviously questions that have arisen from both presentations, and it might be useful to just have a question from each end, and then just take that question down a way and see how we go. So perhaps if we can throw it open to you. We've been doing a lot of talking, so if we throw it open to you at this stage, if there are questions or things that you wanted to raise.
Thank you very much, Campbell. I think at this point we have discussed a wide range of topics within which there is a lot of detail. And these timekeepers are tyrants. They're reminding us at this end of how much time we have left.
17.
We have.
Yes, right.
Our reckoning here in Canada is that we have 17 minutes left. What I'm wondering about is that about right?
Yes, that's right for us, yes.
What I'm thinking at this point is whether or not the time might be better spent having us discuss a little bit what about the future? Where do we go from here? And then with correspondence, we can begin to exchange information in a more detailed fashion. I just would like to make a couple of comments for your consideration. One is just the fact that we're using this technology today, I think, is a reminder to us that we have tremendous resources available to us. Your discussion about strategic planning and tightly arranged programs at the risk of leaving out the Holy Spirit reminds me of I'm going to show my age now, but J.B. Phillips wrote a book a long time ago entitled Your God is Too Small. And if you recall that book, the first line of the first chapter says, "Does God understand radar?" And I guess the thing that comforts me each day is to think that with the guidance of the Holy Spirit as part of what it is we're trying to do, we have the advantage on our side. I want to make a couple of comments about a potential process that we might follow. We've been videotaping our end of the conference so we can study what has been said today. I wanted to tell you how impressed we have been with the quality of the materials that you have forwarded to us, particularly your strategic plan. And I'm wondering at this point if we have agreement on the continued value of this, if we might not develop a strategic plan just for this process, that we might identify the categories of work that we could share in, both at the organizational and at the grassroots and at the quality assurance levels, and then divide our exchanges with each other with our respective experts. We have a lot of resources, I think, that we could share with each other. And in addition to that, Professor Donald Burke, who is a professor at our Catherine Booth Bible College in Winnipeg, has taken a sabbatical to write a paper on the theology of social services, which he expects to have completed by next June, and which he thinks will form the basis of a book that will be widely distributed. In addition to that, we formed a National Social Planning Council to assist us in the development of how we proceed in the future. And I'm wondering if, given the limited amount of time we have, we might exchange some views now about where you think we might go with each other on this process, and leave the exchange of detailed information to our respective consultants.
Yes, I certainly, that seems a good idea to me. We likewise feel that we'd just like to thank you for what you've presented us today, because I think the sorts of issues that you're raising, the way in which you're going about it, has some real appeals for us. So we would very much like to continue the dialogue, and the idea of actually having a strategic plan just for this process in which we identify the major areas in which we have common interest, and then a process for actually developing that would be very helpful, because obviously there's a wide spectrum of things that we could get tied up with. Now, we haven't done a lot, David, of thinking about the ongoing thing at this stage, I must say, but you know, certainly that would be the feeling from around the room that I'm getting at this stage, that we should do that. I don't know whether anybody else wants to comment on that.
Certainly, I think there's a great deal of value in sharing experience and learning lessons. My observation is that in some matters we are advanced in relation to the Canadian territory, and in other matters the reverse is true. So there seems to be a great deal of value to me in sharing. I like your idea, Christine, about the consultants, and if it were possible to share at a consultant's level, that would be very useful.
So it is a matter, I guess, David, of identifying those areas and just the process by which we go about doing that. I guess we also likewise have videotaped this conference. We only get our end, or we get your presentation and our comments. We don't actually get the pictures from this end. But it would be, we will certainly go through that. We are now going into 3 days conference, so it's good timing for us, and we could spend some time thinking about how we take this further, looking again at the video and what are the key issues for us. So I wonder if perhaps a sharing of those issues and some idea for processing what we can offer in terms of that. I mean, it seems to me that even we are very dependent at this stage on quality improvement working parties, which seem very much like your consultants groups. And I mean, it just appears to me that, you know, down the track we may repeat a conference like this where we actually have one of our quality improvement working parties meeting with one of your consultant groups and sharing some dialogue. So that's a possibility.
More comment?
Anybody else want to comment?
You don't want it specific, do you?
Yeah.
I think at this point it could be.
One of the things you were talking about, this is Christine McMillan, was the contract culture and the necessity to be experts and knowing how to negotiate. And I'm wondering what impact that's had on having to provide added positions in your structure, looking at the fact that you're now dealing with local authorities as opposed to national authorities, and how time-consuming that is and what kinds of people you're needing to develop that process.
Yes, I mean, it has really altered things very dramatically for us, because what we've had to do is empower more our managers. I mean, I guess the national manager structure for us has been important, that we have that focus, and so those contracts are still managed nationally largely, but we use the local managers got to be a lot more involved than they were in the past, because their program individually comes under scrutiny. So, and the whole thing is about contracts. It's about performing to those contracts, and just the reporting system that we've needed to develop to make sure that we're actually providing regular and updated reporting on those contracts has been important. So I think, yes, we certainly are able to offer in that particular area, I think, quite a bit of experience and expertise.
Could I just add to that, Christine? I think certainly the contracting process itself has required extra resources than previously existing. But the main thrust of activity has been internal. The main thrust of my focus is on the internal activities of managers and staff who actually deliver the services in order to fulfil our contract requirements and in order to remain a desirable provider from a purchase perspective.
Thank you.
Not contracting itself.
I think another area that I feel some concern about is the rate of change for us as a social program department, and the difficulty of keeping top leadership and the rest of the territory up to speed with that. We're finding very, very difficult. We're finding it difficult to, I mean, we have top leadership who are very sympathetic to the social program, and I'm not criticising them in any way, but it's very difficult for them to actually keep up with the huge changes that are actually occurring for us. And I don't know whether there are some things there that you can help us with, because certainly we're struggling, I think, with that at this stage.
I think that what we're experiencing is that the rate of change is so great and so sudden, and the impacts, those that we do not feel prepared for, that the administration tend to be hearing from us on those things that are not going very well, when in fact there are quite a large number of new and innovative things being done in the territory that are more in the developmental stage and haven't reached the point where they can be announced as successes or where the results can really be seen. And so in our strategic planning process, we tend to want to take a fair amount of time on celebrating the achievements of the past. When we started out, it was the achievement of or the achievements of the last 112 years in social services. We tend to do that now more on a shorter term basis and say, what have we done lately? You know, and what can we talk about that is going to be durable and that is going to bring about, particularly in the area of fundraising, the opportunity to raise more funds to be able to have the flexibility that we're going to need. I think that as we move through this process, we're going to find more and more of those kind of opportunities, but it's been a bit of a dry period for us. Ray, did you want to comment?
Not on that topic as much, but you are doing a lot with training and development. And I'm wondering how recent an innovation is that. In Canada, there's not many of our programs that are getting into skills development or training for employment. We've tried in various ways over the past years, but not being very successful. I'm gathering that you're having opportunities to bid for contracts in this area. I'm wondering how recent a feature this is in your service.
Well, we've actually had this service going for the last 16 years now. What originally started off as a Salvation Army initiative with what was then called the Community Work Schemes was then sponsored by some industry and then by what was then called the Department of Labour, who then fully sponsored and subsidised it, and it just grew like topsy, with as many as 60 or 70 centres at one stage around the country. And then there was the very urgent need to rationalise it to a level that became manageable for the Salvation Army. And at that point, of course, a national office was set up and a national structure put into place, because there was just this topsy-turvy of activity with the local officer, local Salvation Army officer, with the local Crown agency dealing with labour issues or employment issues. And we have really evolved over that period of time to where we are today. And in a lot of ways, it's actually a very unique program in New Zealand, and one that's very highly regarded and very well thought of, and achieves very, very good results. We have the anticipated results that we're expected to achieve, I guess, is in the vicinity of 70%, either for further education or vocational training, or better still for the government, full-time employment. And yeah, I guess that's where we are.
George, I think it's significant to note that there are a number of other providers in this scene as well. It was a Salvation Army initiative in the first place, but as government agencies took responsibility for it, so other agencies also became involved. Now there are a number of other providers, both church and private.
think that's correct, and I think that if we can develop a plan, we can make the best use of our time and opportunities like this to share information. And I guess what has impressed me in the last few months as we've been working on this is the remarkable similarities between Canada and New Zealand, and not only in the economy changes, but the social changes, as well as the services of the Salvation Army. And I just want to take the opportunity to wish you all well and the Lord's blessing. And I think I can speak for my colleagues at this end to say we're very excited about this, and we would like to see this process continue.
Thank you for that, and likewise, it's been a real. It's certainly stimulated our minds this morning, and the same similarities. I mean, so many things that are actually come up in your conversation and your talk this morning are the very issues that we are developing, and we know by the number of the sort of Canadian media here at the moment that there must be some changes happening politically for you, yes, which are very similar to ours. So we're keen to develop the process. We too do wish you God's blessing, and we can pray in a more sensible way for the work that you've gone. I think in terms of this country, that Canada has always been held in a very special place, and we've always looked to your ministry and to the development of the Army within Canada as a very special place in the world. And so we will very much value and welcome a continued dialogue. And so what we will do is put together a list of things and do some reflection, and we'll be back in touch after we've done that. So God bless you.
Thank you, and we'll look forward to that.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Cheerio.
Bye.
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 God bless you. Bye-bye.
We'll go and enjoy our...
Whatever.
Yeah.
Lamb stew now. Oh no, fresh.
Is this the first time?